Welcome to Auto Mundial, the weekly car news and review show where this week we're taking a look at the magnificent Bentley Continental GT Speed as it squares up against the best from Aston Martin.
We also have the new Mercedes E-Class and the facelifted Volkswagen Polo, plus a pair of plug-in hybrids from Toyota and Land Rover.
And if that wasn't enough, MG is back with a new electric SUV. That is all coming up. First though, the news.
Volvo has created the world's first fossil-free steel vehicle. Showcased with an autonomous load carrier commonly used in mining, the fossil-free green steel was produced and supplied by Swedish manufacturer SSAB. While it's unclear whether fossils were used elsewhere in the vehicle's construction, the load carrier demonstrates an initiative that Volvo hopes will be key to achieving its goal of climate neutrality by 2040. The vehicle itself is electric and autonomous and is scheduled to enter limited production next year.
Normally, when a manufacturer decides to give one of its models a midlife update, it does the bare minimum to keep the car competitive and get journalists talking about it. Often called facelifts, they tend to mainly consist of new lights, maybe some tweaked bumpers and an updated infotainment system to lift the interior. Occasionally, though, manufacturers get a bit carried away. This is the new Volkswagen Polo, and while VW is saying that this is merely a facelift of the existing 6th generation car, it's practically a new model. Starting at the front end, the 2022 Polo gets a new face inspired by the Mark 8 Golf, with LED lights now standard across the range. A light bar stretches the full width of the grille, while the bumper has also been completely redesigned. At the back, the Polo gets some new boomerang-shaped rear lights, as well as a new bumper and updated badges. There's a host of new alloy wheel options too, and 4 new colours to choose from, including this rather fetching shade of purple. The engine lineup for the UK will consist entirely of 3-cylinder 1-litre petrol motors. Entry-level, naturally aspirated cars get 79 brake horsepower and a manual gearbox. The next model up gets 94 brake horsepower thanks to a turbocharger and is available with a manual or automatic transmission, while top-spec R-Line cars like this one come with a 108 brake horsepower motor and automatic DSG gearbox. Step inside the new Polo and there are yet more changes, although they're not quite so obvious as the exterior styling ones. It gets some updated trim and a new steering wheel, as well as some updated heater controls. The knobs and buttons have been replaced by touch-sensitive panels, although only on cars spec'd with climate control. A new 10.25-inch digital instrument display sits alongside an 8-inch infotainment screen, both of which come as standard, but you can choose to upgrade the central screen to 9.2 inches. Sat-nav is an optional extra, but Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are built in. Autonomous tech has been upgraded with Volkswagen's IQ Drive travel assist function, which can take over steering, braking and acceleration from a standstill in automatic cars, and from 18 miles per hour in manuals. Of course, the driver must keep their hands on the wheel at all times. As we know though, this is a hotly contested corner of the market, and to come out on top, the Polo will have to beat this, the best-selling Renault Clio.
It may look similar to the old version, but this new model steps things up in both technology and build quality. It gets a great range of petrol and diesel engines, as well as a class-leading cabin. There are lots of nice soft touch materials, as well as nice shiny bits of plastic and aluminium trim. Dominating the dashboard though is the sizable 9.3-inch tablet infotainment screen. Mounted portrait rather than the usual landscape, the screen is a smart addition, angled slightly towards the driver. And thankfully, Renault hasn't got carried away with its functions. The heater controls, for example, are physical buttons under the screen rather than some clunky and awkward touch-sensitive items like you get in the VW. Best of all, the Clio starts at a smidge over £16,000. That's more than 1,500 quid less than the Volkswagen.
The Polo is on sale now, with deliveries expected to start by 2022. A sporty GTI version is also coming next year to take on the Fiesta ST, but it still seems to be the Renault Clio that's king of the super minis.
Mercedes-Benz doesn't usually go too wild with its facelifts. A bit of updated tech, some restyled body panels and a few new options in the paint booth, and the job's a good one. But the new Mercedes E-Class is different. The brand's best-selling model, which has sold over 14 million units since its inception in 1953, is one of the market's go-to executive saloons. However, this facelift is more than you might realise at first glance. That's because the major changes here are on the tech side. Yes, the styling has been tweaked here and there, but the list of driver aids is what Merc is shouting about most. Some of the standard features include brake assist, parking assist and blind spot assist. There's also an optional driver assistance package that includes speed limit monitoring and stop-start assistance. Power ranges between 154 and 362 brake horsepower for regular cars, with the top of the range E63 AMG pumping out over 600 horsepower. But it's the tech on this car that stands out. One of the new features is an updated MBUX, or Mercedes-Benz User Experience. Simply put, the cockpit can be individualised and adapts to the user via artificial intelligence. This infotainment package includes two 10.25-inch widescreen displays. The central one responds to touch, voice or trackpad control, as well as augmented reality sat-nav that we first saw in the new A-Class. And if 10 inches is not large enough, each screen can be upgraded to 12.3 inches if you spec your car correctly. The cabin also features a new steering wheel design with capacitive sensors. In other words, the car now knows that the driver is alert without making small steering inputs. But is the new E-Class a bit too clever for its own good? You can't help but feel all these electronics, while clever, might get a little irritating day to day. So if the robotic E-Class is not for you, what other big German saloons are there?
It's been an ongoing competition between the three German marques for decades. There's the Merc, and then the BMW 5 Series and the Audi A6. Beginning with the BMW, and like the Merc, the 5 Series features several engine options. There's a pair of petrol plug-in hybrids and a handful of petrol and diesels, as well as the full-fat M5. Inside, the 5 Series shares much of its styling with the brand's flagship 7 Series limo, including the latest iDrive system, gesture control and semi-autonomous driving features. So how about the Audi A6? Well, it may have fewer engines to choose from, but they all feature a mild hybrid system. Inside, Audi has certainly splashed out on the standard equipment. Even the entry-level sport model is equipped with leather seats, dual-zone climate control, ambient LED interior lighting and keyless go.
Competition for the E-Class then is as fierce as it ever was, but this latest version is among the best saloons on the market and more than a match for BMW and Audi.
Join us again after the break as Bentley faces Aston in a GT battle.
Still to come, the new Bentley Continental GT Speed. But first,
when Toyota first launched the plug-in hybrid version of the RAV4 last year, we could think of many more interesting ways of spending over £46,000. You could get a Range Rover Velar for that, or even a high-spec Jaguar F-Pace. And it seems that the public agreed, with Toyota now slashing the price of the RAV4 PHEV by £5,000. Now that still isn't cheap for what is, at the end of the day, a mid-size SUV with a Toyota badge on it. But we've always really rather liked the current generation of RAV4, so what's the PHEV like? Well, the first thing to know is that it's actually pretty powerful. The RAV's 2.5-litre petrol motor is hooked up to an 18 kilowatt per hour lithium-ion battery pack, which powers a pair of electric motors for a combined 302 brake horsepower. As a result, 0 to 62 is dealt with in 6 seconds, while also boasting a class-leading 46 miles of electric-only driving, although Toyota reckons that figure can be bumped up to 60 miles if you're driving in town. This means that on the WLTP combined cycle, the RAV4 will deliver 282 miles per gallon, emitting just 22 grams per kilometre of CO2. All models are well equipped, and we recommend going for the entry-level design model.
But how does it compare to this, the Land Rover Discovery Sport? Specifically the P300e model. Like the RAV4 PHEV, it's a plug-in hybrid, but it goes about things rather differently. Where the Toyota makes use of a big engine with plenty of grunt, the Land Rover makes do with a little 3-cylinder 1.5-litre petrol motor putting. It still makes plenty of power though, more than matching the Toyota at 305 brake horsepower. It doesn't have quite the same electric range at 43 miles, and it isn't quite as fast, but it's beautifully trimmed and capable off-road. However, basic Discovery Sports are not going to be available with hybrid power, meaning you'll have to stump up some extra cash over the Toyota. Both of these cars are among our favourites in the class, but we can't help but feel the high prices commanded by the PHEV systems aren't quite worth it. They may be a good halfway house between ICE and EV, but do the maths before you take the plunge.
In the past few years, MG has been making strides into the affordable electric car market with models like this, the ZS EV. Fresh from a fairly comprehensive facelift, the ZS EV has a more distinguished look about it to mark it out from the internal combustion-powered versions. The front grille has been ditched in favour of a new aerodynamic front panel, while new LED lights, updated bumpers and new alloy wheels complete the makeover. 2 versions are available. The 51 kilowatt per hour standard range version with 198 miles of range and a top spec of 72 kilowatt per hour long range model that can drive 273 miles on a charge. Yes, there are plenty of EVs that can do a lot more than that these days, but both ZS models are expected to come in at under £30,000 when they go on sale in 2022. 3 trim levels will be available, starting off with the SE, with higher spec Trophy and Trophy Connect models getting more standard equipment. As before, MG is offering one of the most affordable routes into EV SUV ownership. Now, it won't be to everyone's taste, but with a variety of electric cars in its lineup to choose from, MGH is certainly headed in the right direction.
The Bentley Continental GT is one of our very favourite Grand Tourers. Designed to cover vast distances at great speed and in great comfort, it's the perfect representation of what a Bentley should be. With its W12 motor producing 626 brake horsepower, it can hit 62 from rest in just 3.7 seconds, onto a top speed of 207 miles per hour. You might imagine then, with figures like that, that Bentley would be happy enough to leave the Continental alone for a few years until it's due a midlife update. However, you'd be wrong. This is the all-new Continental GT Speed, and as the name suggests, it's even faster. The massive 6-litre twin-turbocharged W12 engine remains in place, but this time it's been tuned up to 650 brake horsepower. The result is a 0 to 62 time of 3.6 seconds, just a tenth of a second faster than the standard car. The top speed seems similarly restrained too, adding just 1 miles per hour to the standard cars. So, if the so-called speed isn't actually much faster than the standard car, what has Bentley changed? Well, along with the extra power and torque extracted from the engine, the 8-speed dual-clutch gearbox has also been tweaked. In sport mode, shifts are now twice as fast, while the exhaust has also been altered to produce what Bentley calls greater character. Dig a little deeper still, and you begin to realise that the speed isn't just for straight-line performance. The engineers have been busy trying to make this car a more thrilling thing to drive. The electronic all-wheel steering has been changed, and it's got a new electronic limited slip differential on the rear axle, a first for Bentley. This, along with a recalibrated all-wheel drive system that can send more power to the rear wheels, means this big, heavy GT is built for corners as well as cruises. In fact, Bentley reckons the Speed can provide effortless progressive yaw angles. In plain English, that means it should be good for some pretty hefty power slides. Don't for a second, though, think that the Continental is now some sort of stripped-out track car. When most manufacturers reveal souped-up versions of existing models, they'll go to great lengths to reduce the car's weight. Not Bentley, though. After all, this is still primarily a luxury long-distance machine, so you won't find any bucket seats or plastic windows here. In fact, the only token nods towards weight saving seem to be the optional carbon fibre interior trim and the enormous carbon ceramic brake discs, which save around 30 kilos. To spot a Continental Speed, you'll need your wits about you. The styling is largely unchanged, with only some badges, tinted grills, 22-inch wheels and altered side skirts marking it out from the standard car. Climb inside the cabin and things can be similarly restrained, depending on how you spec it. Of course, you can fill it with Alcantara and carbon fibre, but you'll still be able to opt for the more traditional wood and leather combos.
So, is this now the ultimate super GT car? Well, if it wants that crown, it needs to beat this, the Aston Martin DBS Superleggera. And would you just look at it? Every inch an Aston, the vast DBS turns heads wherever it goes, and yet it still looks classy. Make no mistake though, the DBS is an animal. The 5.2-litre twin-turbo V12 pumps out a staggering 715 brake horsepower, powering the flagship Aston from 0 to 62 in 3.4 seconds onto a top speed of 211. It just about has the Bentley beaten for speed then, but inside, the DBS simply can't compete. The Bentley's interior feels special, but in the Aston, it doesn't look or feel as good as the price tag would suggest.
As beautiful and powerful as the Aston Martin is though, it seems like the Bentley Continental GT Speed could be the new go-to Super GT car. It enhances the standard car, but it doesn't shout about it. It'll keep up with a supercar, but cosset you in luxury. And that surely is what Grand Tourers are all about.
Join us again next week on Auto Mundial as we check out the enormous Lexus LX.